Among the various operative procedures that we do for the treatment of epilepsy, which cannot be treated by medical means, is an operation which involves cutting the fibers between the right side of the brain and the left side of the brain. This is an operation that we still do, and there is a significant control in the epilepsy of these patients without significantly affecting their brain function. When this operation was first done many years ago, a psychologist called Roger Sperry studied these people who had physically split brains and made a Nobel Prize-winning discovery. The discovery is that we do not have one brain, but two brains with fairly distinct functions. The left brain is what we traditionally call the masculine brain, the logical, the mathematical, the sequential, the achievement-oriented, the expressive brain, whereas the right brain is the feeling brain, the loving, the caring, the artistic, the music-oriented, the childlike, the playful brain. Now, the fact is we have both sides of the brain. And the problem is all our parents, teachers, and education systems and universities tend to help us to use the left brain more, because the more we use the left brain, the greater we are a success in the world, at the cost of not using the caring, the loving, the feeling brain. This talk is to tell us how you can, in addition to being a success in the outer world, how you can be kind, considerate, caring, loving, and still be able to bring a balance on both sides of the world, both sides of the brain. And I've titled this talk, The Right Way to Use Your Right Brain. Essentially, it means how you can be very, very sensitive. So sensitive, at the same time, you're not affected. Normally, when you become very sensitive, there is a chance that you can get emotionally so affected that your brain does not function. Now, this talk is primarily to tell us how you can be so sensitive in all walks of our life, at the same time, you are not affected. One of the great skills that we need to do is the art of listening, and I'd like you to practice right away. Ask yourself this question: am I listening from my left brain, the masculine or the thinking brain? Am I here to see what is that there is for me to learn so that I get more information, so that I can be a good speaker on a topic like this? Or am I here listening from my right brain, that is the feeling brain? I would request you to come from the heart. And if you are able to listen from the heart, if you're able to empathize, if you're able to be in sync with whatever I'm saying, my conviction can be your conviction, my understanding can be your understanding. Therefore, listen well and attentively. This has been my experience some time ago. One of my family members, a close relative of mine, was undergoing a whole body scan, and I was in the other room watching the monitor as the images came. And I had the chief of the diagnostic division making a doctor-to-doctor information about exactly what is happening. As this person was closely related to me, I was more operating from my feeling brain, and the doctor was thinking that I am working from the intellectual brain. You know, you can see where that mismatch happens. The moment I found that there was something very serious, my mind just stopped working. He continued to speak, but it made absolutely no difference to me. Friends, this has made a tremendous change in the way I see my patients. Why do you select a doctor? You select a doctor for his clinical abilities, for his knowledge, for his expertise, for his experience, predominantly for his left intellectual brain functioning. And when you go to a doctor, especially when you are dealing with neurosciences, 60% of our work is brain tumors, and 60% of brain tumors are cancerous. And when you see a scan and you are looking at it from your intellectual brain, the family is also very anxious. But even if the patient happens to be a doctor, even if it's a man, you're working from the woman's or the feeling brain. And therefore, I always like to have my patient very close to me so that I have an eye contact. I'm able to see what is the emotional state of my patient, and not only feel the pulse of the patient, but the heartbeat of the patient, so that I am in sync as I speak. I should not speak at an intellectual level when the person is anxious or worried about what is going to happen. The moment I sense that my patient is a little worried and anxious, I go to the next level. That is, I'm able to be empathize and say that all will be well, there is nothing to worry, and it will be fine. There is a book from John Gray called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. And this brings the same thought once again. Two people, loving, caring, but then when they have issues to discuss, there is sometimes a disparity because a man looks from the left brain, the intellectual brain, and the woman looks from the feeling brain. The issues are the same, but the perspectives from which you see are different, and therefore you have differences. And when the differences become acute, there is a possibility that the woman may break down. And when a woman breaks down, what does the man generally do? Tries to reason it out, tries to explain. And does it help her? It does not. You can see there are two disparate planes in which they are functioning. She really wants to know at this moment, do you really care? Can you be more expressive that you care? And you just cannot say sorry, but you need to mean that you are sorry. No, that is where you need to be so sensitive from the plane at which people come. Let me give you an example of a little child who comes home with an examination report where she has not done well despite her good performance. Now she is devastated with her own performance, the results, but she's more anxious about what her parents are going to say, what her father is going to say, what her mother is going to say. Can you see the emotional trauma the child is going to go through? And when the father and the mother is shocked with the result, now are you going to empathize with the child, which is very rare, or are you going to give your gyan? You said, this is what I told you. Again, I would like you to see, the more sensitive you become, you realize that good communication happens when you are on the same plane with the person with whom you communicate. And therefore, whenever it needs to be at the emotional domain, come down to the emotional domain. This happens in all fields of life. You need a kind doctor, a kind manager, a kind leader. Now, leaders too need to have this amount of sensitivity. Let me share a story with you. And this is a story attributed to Alexander. And he was very keen to take back one of those enlightened masters from India. Here was a world conqueror begging a person who looked like a beggar to come. And he tells him, I'm the world conqueror. I can give you whatever you want. I want you to come to my country. And the man says, I have everything that I need. Please look for someone else. And angry Alexander takes out his sword and he says, either you're coming with me or I will behead you now. The man very coolly looks at him and says, you're welcome to behead me, but before you do so, I want you to register these words. You may think you're the world conqueror, but in my eyes, you are the slave of my slave. And the master goes on to explain what he means by the slave of my slave. And he says, the anger and upset that you demonstrate are my slaves because I have mastery over them. And you are a slave to something that I have control over. And therefore, I consider you the slave of my slave. And he gives a final punch. And this punch is for all of us. Be ready to receive. And he says, you might have conquered the whole world, but if you have not conquered yourself, you have not conquered very much. Friends, the left brain helps you to conquer the outer world. And when you become more sensitive, you enter into the inner world. And this will help you to become the master of the inner world. And that is why Stephen Covey has made this famous phrase. He says, private victory precedes public victory. All of us have this supercomputer. We have this wonderful processing intellectual left brain. But this left brain cannot function properly whenever you are emotionally upset for any reason. And therefore, I would like to give this message. Can I be so sensitive at the same time not to be affected? Let me tell you a story. Be with the story to see what this message gives. This is the story of a father and a son. And a boy saw something unusual. A man in uniform being handcuffed to another man, and both of them were walking. He asked his father, what is this? And the father says, this man in uniform is a policeman. The other person is possibly a thief, so he is taking him to the jail or to the police station. After a few days, the boy sees something very unusual. One policeman handcuffed to another man with 10 armed guards. And the boy asks, Papa, what's happening? And the father says, this man is a bigger thief. There is a greater chance that he might escape. Therefore, there are more armed guards around him. A few days later, an important dignitary was visiting the town, and surrounding the car of the VIP, there were hundreds of armed guards, and the boy was excited. He says, Papa, Papa, come. The biggest thief has come. The father then explains, Sonny, in the first two examples I gave you, the man in uniform was the boss, and the one to whom he was handcuffed is the slave. In the last example I gave you, the person sitting in the car was the boss, and all those armed people were at that person's command. Friends, this supercomputer, is it in your control? Think. The more you feel that, every time you get angry, every time you get upset, every time you lose your sense of cool for any reason, you know you have lost control. Let me give you one aphorism which will help you to deal with upsets at all times. This has been given to me by a great master. He says, remember the FIR rule. And what does FIR stands for? F stands for frequency. How frequently I become very upset. I stands for intensity of the upset, and intensity is subclassified into mental, verbal, and bodily level. Now, you are very close to me. I may be upset, but I'm able to mask it. You don't see it in my eyes. But once the intensity becomes more, you see it in my voice, my volume becomes more, my tone becomes changed, you know I am upset. And then once it comes to the bodily level, you see it in my bodily reaction. So frequency, intensity, which may be mental, verbal, or at the body level. And finally, the R stands for recovery. True mastery is not that you get upset. The true mastery is how quickly you recover. Friends, I have to conclude, and I will conclude with one hoarding that I saw outside Bangalore airport, put up by one of the property developers. You would never fail to miss it. It says, you have landed, have you arrived? What is your definition of having arrived? Another great teacher of mine said, you know, you have arrived when your life has been suffused with love, when you have been able to give love and you've been able to receive love. One thought about love, both from the left brain and from the right brain. Ordinary love tends to be very possessive. That means when you love somebody, you begin to possess that person. You feel this person is only for me. And the more you begin to be possessive of somebody, you infringe the freedom of that person. Remember, you can never possess anybody. You can possess objects, you can never possess human beings. If you have been in a relationship where the person who loves you infringes your freedom, over a period of time, you see that love begins to evaporate, and after some time, there is no love. Love can grow only in a milieu of freedom. True love can happen only when you truly set your partner free. And if your love is true, the person will always come back to you. And therefore, if you have to grow in love, you will have to have a good balance between the left brain and the right brain. It is the left brain that talks about freedom and the right brain that talks about having love. Now, this you can give the person you love. But can you demand freedom from the person you love? Very difficult. If the person gives you freedom, good. If the person does not give you freedom, what do? You may ask, but if you don't get freedom, you know what is true freedom? True freedom is freedom in spite of bondage. You know, where in spite of all the limitations, I am free, because nobody can take away my attitude to be free, to be enjoy myself this moment the way I am. I'll give you a reference to Viktor Frankl. Read his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a German Jew from Austria. He was incarcerated in the concentration camps, went through a lot of personal torture. But there was a moment of tremendous release when he said, these captors can do anything to my body, they cannot do anything to me. Can you see a man in a concentration camp being tortured but free? That is true freedom. And finally, I will leave you with 2 words. These 2 words will help you to live what I say the right way, to use your right brain, to be able to live a full outer life and a very successful and a happy, fulfilled, love-filled inner life. The first word, now this is no ordinary word, it's a mantra, it's a Maha Mantra, and I want you to treat it with great care. This Maha Mantra that I'll give it to you in English is the word thanks. Thanks means the attitude of gratitude. Until this moment, whatever has happened in your life, good, bad, whatever, if I can say thank you and be truly grateful. Ordinarily, we look at what we do not have and feel miserable. But if you have this attitude of gratitude, remember one thing, you can never be grateful and miserable at the same time. Can you? I will refer to a wonderful TED talk which says, you want to be happy? Be grateful. Just listen to that talk. Amazing. Now, grateful people are happy people. And if you are a happy person, you're a productive person. You create a wonderful oasis of joy and love around you when you are happy. And happy people are productive people. They are a gift to the world. And this gift comes where a person is able to count his blessings, relish his blessings, and show that he is a blessed person. The first word, the gift for you, is the word thanks. The second and the more and maybe even more beautiful word is the word yes. Now, what happens in the future, I do not know. But I have that resilience, I have that resistance to be able to say, whatever is in store for me, I'm going to handle it. And the word is yes. The Muslims have a beautiful word which says, inshallah. I accept the will of the Lord. Jesus has given it in a beautiful words, thy will be done. Now, let this not be a passive acceptance. The Alcoholic Anonymous have a saying which says, change whatever is in your power to change, to accept that which cannot be changed, and the wisdom to know the difference. When you have these two words, thanks and yes, a new you is born. Your eye of intuition, the third eye is born. And when the third eye is born, you become a balanced person. The third eye, according to Shiva has got the third eye. That is why he's also called Trayambaka. And Shiva is the complete person, a good blend between the male and the female. And when you have the blend of the female and the male, you have access to both the inner world and to the outer world. You win the outer world and you become the master of the inner world. And then finally, do you still get upset? Of course you get upset. And when you get upset, what you will say? Supposing bad news comes, the first reaction is, what? But internally you're saying, so what? Friends, from what to so what? Thank you very much.